Let's get right to the point. You want to build a better commander deck. You're focused and you want your deck to be focused too. Good. The problem is you've got a commander and you've got an archetype, but you're the kind of person to add like 200 cards to a deck list and not know what to cut and not be able to pull the trigger. So let's teach you how to build a better, focused, streamlined commander deck that'll have your opponents asking where it really came from. I've covered building inwards towards your commander, where you start with cards in the 99, then let your piles of cards tell you what kind of deck you're actually building. But vastly more of you said you start with commanders or an archetype and build out towards the 99, so let's start with my formula for that. And by popular request, folks have asked for a mono-black aristocrat deck build. Ayara was thrown around, so was Sephiroth, so let's look first at choosing a commander. I know many of you, especially newer players, may not actually choose your commander. It may be thrust upon you by something cool you opened, or Universes Beyond may feature your favorite character that draws you into these games. These are all valid options. But if you've found your commander, we focus on what they do to find out what we want to do. So whether it's Sephiroth, Ayara, Yawgmoth, or Braids, let's start with a mono-black legend that wants creatures to die, the core of any aristocrat archetype build. And for our example, we'll use EDH Rec's current #1 mono-black legend, Sephiroth Fabled SOLDIer. With Sephiroth at the helm, we want to build a deck that utilizes our commander best as both sacrifice outlet and win con. Sephiroth, importantly, allows us to sacrifice another creature when he enters or attacks to draw a card. Bonus, that's card draw in the command zone. And whenever a creature we control dies, we drain target opponent for 1. That's a win con. But if that ability triggers 4 times in a single turn, we flip Sephiroth into the One-Winged Angel, a 5/5 flyer that gives us an emblem that also drains an opponent for 1 whenever a creature dies and cannot be removed. There's currently no way to remove emblems from the game. It's a permanent Blood Artist, and that's really good. So if we start with Sephiroth as our commander and build out from him, we know what our 3 synergy areas will be. Plan 1 is sacrifice creatures. Plan 2 is make creatures to sacrifice. Plan 3 is dealing damage to opponents when creatures die. This is how we build a streamlined deck around a commander. We choose the commander, then fit the strategies around what the most reliable card in our deck is. That's the nutshell, but let's expand. We can take Game Plan 1, sacrifice creatures, to a different degree, and that's to focus on sacrificing 4 creatures a turn to flip our commander and get an emblem. And it just so happens that there are 4 players in almost all games of Commander. So if we prioritize this game plan to focus on each player sacrificing a creature, then we're golden. The deck will work, and we do the thing. So the first 2 cards I'm adding to this deck are Grave Pact and Dictate of Erebos. I don't play these in games under bracket 4, so we already know exactly where we're fitting in the bracket scale. But the reason these are important is, since we can sacrifice a creature when Sephiroth enters, if each opponent has a creature and we have one of these effects, Sephiroth enters, pings for 4, then immediately flips and gives us an emblem. Easy mode, easy game, easy life. But since it's just that easy, are there any other effects like this? Here's where I'm sharing with you one of my tricks for deck building and finding core synergies. Use Scryfall. What I do is I take the effect I want, like each other player sacrifices a creature, and I plug that into Scryfall, set the color to black, and search. Turns out, apart from Grave Pact, there's only one other card that uses this exact line, Siphon Flesh. It's okay. It's 5 mana and makes me 3 2/2 zombies that I could then sacrifice to Sephiroth's other attack triggers. That's good enough to plot into the 99 for now, but at 5 mana, it's likely going to be the upper end of the curve and the first card I cut. But I noticed that Dictate of Erebos isn't in this list, and that's because the wording is slightly different. It says each opponent sacrifices a creature rather than each other player. So let's plot that into Scryfall, and oh wow, there are 33 results. Some winners, some stinkers, but let's work on determining which ones make the cut. I could either review it here in Scryfall, then drag the card images over to Moxfield, my deck builder of choice, or I could take this line of search syntax, plot it into the search bar of Moxfield, and voila, the exact same search results, but now I'm able to add the cards directly to my deck if I want. Now, seeing that I want this to be a bracket 4 deck, I'm going to immediately disqualify any cards that cost 6 or more. That's just too much to ask for a card that isn't going to win the game on the spot. I end up getting much more value from casting 2 smaller spells and letting synergy drive us to victory than casting 1 big spell. Flare of Malice is a winner, since casting it for free by sacrificing a creature means Sephiroth triggers 4 times and flips, which is perfect. 0 mana, instant speed removal, and flip. Beauty. And it looks like there are a few 2 mana plus upside effects here, like Extract a Confession, which could force opponents to sacrifice their higher power creature. Soul Shatter costs 3 and could hit Planeswalkers too, but always hits the highest mana value baddie your opponents control. And Vona's Hunger has each opponent sacrifice a creature, but could also have them sacrifice half their creatures rounded up if we have the City's Blessing. If we have a few Sephiroth emblems out, that could win us the game on the spot. But you know, I remember this old sorcery from Odyssey, Innocent Blood. That would be great here as well. I wonder why it didn't show up in these searches. Oh, because it's each player sacrifices a creature. That makes sense. This is still a great effect, and a card that belongs in this deck. Let's see if there are any other effects that say each player sacrifices a creature that are worth including. 15, wow! Oh, and it's showing me some of my favorites. Everything Fleshbag Marauder. There are so many variations of this card, and provided each of our opponents have some kind of creature out, any single one of them immediately flips Sephiroth. Demon's Disciple, Gravelighter, Merciless Executioner, Plague Crafter, or even Accursed Marauder. That's 6 variations of this effect for 3 or less mana. If we aren't sacrificing some little dinky token, then these guys can sacrifice themselves. So I'm going to put them all in the list. These are all great effects for Plan 1, sacrificing creatures. How about we now look at Plan 2, having creatures to sacrifice? Here's where I want to make sure we can rely on token creatures. Immediately I go to effects that make us a token creature in our upkeep, like Bitter Blossom, Bitterbloom Bearer, or Dreadhorde Invasion. These may cost us a life, but our commander can eat them and regain that life back easily. The life loss is not an issue. Are there any effects that do this, make a creature in our upkeep, but don't cost life? Let's go back to our syntax in Scryfall and search for black cards that say both upkeep and create a. 18 options, and not all of them create creatures or are playable in Commander. But Ophiomancer is a good option, that's very cool. Apart from that, nothing really looks good. But where's Black Market Connections? That's one that makes tokens and draws cards and makes treasure. Oh, it triggers at the beginning of the first main phase, right. Still, it's good, but not something with similar effects. There is one more black token generator I want in this deck though, one I picked up ages ago and haven't found a home for, Tombstone Stairwell. This one is kinda nutty in any aristocrat deck. It makes a whack of tokens every turn, for every player, and they're all destroyed rather than exiled, so they all trigger aristocrat effects like Sephiroth and Sephiroth's emblem. Because of cumulative upkeep, which increases the cost we have to pay to keep it around every turn, we won't have it for long. Probably maximum 3 turns before it gets out of hand cost-wise, but ideally all we need is 1 turn with it in play, and we're making so many zombies that all of them die and we win the game. Looking at the list, this is clearly not enough token generators just yet. If we ideally want to be sacrificing one of our own creatures when Sephiroth enters, we want dudes under 3 mana to kickstart the business end of this stick. Which is where I next want to look at a group of creatures that are commonly referred to as Bring a Friend creatures. These are creatures that either enter or die and make another body. It's common with goblins like Mog War Marshal, or on white cards like Doomed Traveler, which allow us to get 2 bodies to sacrifice for 1 cost. And in black and colorless, we have 50 examples of this kind of creature, more than enough to make our plans work. And remember, if our plan is to have one of these guys in play before Sephiroth hits the battlefield, we want to be prioritizing anything under 3 mana. Anything over 3 mana value better be a repeatable effect, like a Pawn of Ulamog or Blightmound, in order to justify its use throughout the game and feed its necessity to come down after our commander, or delay our commander coming down until after it for additional value. But options like Carrier Thrall, Discordant Piper, or Doomed Dissenter are all ideal. We get to choose when these guys die, thanks to Sephiroth's sacrifice trigger, which is a perfect direction for our little guys. They live to die. Infestation Sage, Nested Shambler, and Nezumi Linkbreaker all round out just about as many of these little guys at this level we want to be including. But for colorless, we could be including creatures that bring a friend and scale as well, like Hangerback Walker or Big Mother Mouser. Hangerback Walker can be cast for 2 mana, perfect for what we want, but when drawn later in the game can scale up to make more guys when it dies. And Big Mother Mouser for 4 mana makes 2 Robots when it dies, but even if it attacks once, that's now 4 Robots when it dies, which fuels our aristocrats' efforts. So let's park this direction for synergy for now. We've added multiple options. We need to be exercising some restraint to ensure that we have something populated for all of our game plans before we go crazy and add those 200 cards to the list. Remember, assess your cards against your game plan as you add them to your deck lists. It will save you a headache from having to cut down from all of your options to leave you with a list to fill up to 100 cards rather than cut down to 100 cards. Which leaves us with our third synergy path, redundancy for what our commander is doing. It would be ideal if we could rely on just Sephiroth to deal damage to opponents and win us the game. But at some point, he's going to get hated off the table and be unreasonably expensive to recast. So we need effects that will also damage opponents when a creature dies. Ideally each opponent to make that clock faster. Let's begin with one of these effects, Bastion of Remembrance. This fits snugly into our synergy between Make Dudes and Aristocrat effects, while having that key text of whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. How many cards also have that text? Turns out it's just Funeral Room and Grave Venerations. I would have thought there were more. Let's broaden this by looking at, say, Zulaport Cutthroat's ability. Okay, and here's where I see where they differ. The language is slightly different. So let's take a snippet of this effect, namely just the dies, each opponent, portion, and see what goodies we get. And now we get an overlap. In this search, we see some cards we already have in the list, like Dictate of Erebos, so we are on to something. We also see a bunch of creatures that deal damage when they die, which isn't quite what we're looking for. So let's see what goodies we can find in here. And really, all I can see that falls into this overlap is Meathook Massacre, really. It's a flexible board wipe, it pings opponents when our creatures die, and gains us life when their creatures die. It's a good include. Kokusho the Evening Star would also be great too as a curve topper, since it dying drains each opponent for 5 for a big life swing. And that gives me an idea for a synergy overlap for later too. Let me put a pin in that mentally. Wait a second, isn't Marionette Apprentice one of these effects? Oh, it counts artifacts too, and doesn't drain life, just makes opponents lose life. Still, the price is right for the effect. But we need more redundancy. Remember that redundancy equals consistency. Let's look at Blood Artist, which, like Sephiroth, doesn't drain each opponent but rather only targets a single opponent when something dies. It's slower, but it certainly adds up. And here, we rely on Blood Artist, Vengeful Blood Witch, and Falconwrath Noble. And the Noble is the most expensive of this effect we've seen so far at 4 mana. Let's park this hunt for the time being and look at some of the other redundancy we need to account for. Sacrifice outlets and card draw. We can't put all our eggs in the basket with our commander. He's only drawing us 1 card and sacrificing 1 creature per turn. Let's ratchet that up. And immediately I want to add in altars. Phyrexian Altar and Ashnod's Altar. These are the best sacrifice outlets because they don't have any costs to them, and help us ramp as well. Our mana generation needs to be on these effects because we're in mono black. So it's either these effects or mana rocks or rituals only. Those are our only options. Let's also get Spawning Pit in here. This makes us more dudes and rewards us for sacrificing our guys to it. It's controllable and assists us in getting more value from our necessity to sacrifice our own resources. Viscera Seer and Woe Strider are great here and overlap with some of our other game plans. Viscera Seer comes down before Sephiroth, so we can sacrifice him to our commander's trigger if we really need to, and Woe Strider brings friends to the party. Everything we're looking for. And for card draw, let's also include sacrifice synergies by having one-time card draw on effects like Village Rites, Corrupted Conviction, or Deadly Demise. We can also include effects like Skull Clamp if we really wanted to, since we're controlling when our creatures die, and we've got a few 1 toughness dorks in the list. Now, there's one element I want to fit in here as well, and that's dudes that come back. I'm talking about guys that we can sacrifice over and over again, like Forsaken Miner, Bloodghast, or Reassembling Skeleton. Just one of these kind of creatures, and we're creating value engines where sacrificing a creature draws us cards, drains opponents, and in the end doesn't cost us resources apart from maybe a few mana. It's like a value fireball. But Kokusho reminded me about scam effects. These are effects like Malakir Rebirth, Not Dead After All, and Supernatural Stamina. Effects that take a dying creature and bring it back for another round. Feign Death and Undying Malice are the same. 1-mana spells that give a dying creature a second chance at life. And this is important for a few reasons. Yes, we're sacrificing creatures. Imagine casting this on a Fleshbag Marauder with its trigger on the stack. That's 4 mana and 2 cards to take out 2 creatures from each opponent, while also triggering our other die's effects, and that is value. But I also want to be able to cast this on Sephiroth himself, since as a flip card, him dying returns him on his front half and gives us a chance to flip him again, getting more emblems. I want to give myself a challenge to see how many of these Sephiroth emblems we could realistically get in a single game. With those added in, we still need to address our nuts and bolts. We have card draw addressed via synergy and some ramp, but let's look at more ramp and removal options. And since we're in mono black, Jet Medallion is a must-have. The more spells we cast in a single turn, the more mana generating value this produces. I'd recommend the Darkness Crystal in most other cases as well, but since it creates a replacement effect on opponents' creatures dying, it works against our synergies here, and it removes our Sephiroth triggers from opponents' creatures dying, since they're all exiled instead. It's a solid maybe, but I'm not going to include it for now. But I do want to ensure we're including the Urborg and Cabal Coffers 1-2 punch in the deck. We were in mono black, so why not? We may not need all of that mana, but we're going to need to recast our commander eventually, and this makes sure that we can. That means that I want Expedition Map in the list to find them too. And we could add in Nykthos here as well, since we're in mono black as another target for the map and another boost to mana generation. And for removal, I don't want to get too crazy here. We have lots of edict-based removal effects in the list already. Board wipes like Toxic Deluge and Blasphemous Edict should be included, and maybe 1 or 2 pieces of targeted removal like an Infernal Grasp or Tragic Slip, but otherwise I think that we're solid. Then, before we go into testing mode, since this is a Bracket 4 deck, I want to entertain Game Changers. I think I want this more focused on getting some of our real lock-oriented pieces, like Grave Pact or Dictate of Erebos, online faster. So we'll go the tutor path, and I'll include Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, and Imperial Seal as my Game Changers. While this is a Bracket 4 deck, I could go ham on Game Changers, but I'm not going to for now, though I like the looks of Ancient Tomb and Necropotence. And all told, that leaves us at 104 cards in the deck. Close to perfect. Damn, I almost got it in one. Let's adjust some of the lands, then run it through test hands to see where we want to add or cut. Let's tweak some of my 40 placeholder lands to include Phyrexian Tower, Spymaster's Vault, and Bojuka Bog. Then, hell, let's throw that Ancient Tomb in the list too. Adjust to keep 40 lands, and we're set to start testing. Before we get to test hands, I do see that we have 28 creatures in the deck, 14 instants, thanks to 5 of them being scam spells, and 10 enchantments. Those all might be numbers that need to come down a little bit. Our curve looks so incredibly tight it's laughable. The whole deck is at 1 to 3 mana, with only a few outliers at 4 and 5 mana, and nothing above that. Talk about tight. The average mana value right now is under 1.5, which means 40 lands might even be overkill. Let's take a look at test hands to find out for sure. And in the first 5 test hands, I don't think there's a single one that I would throw back. Every one of them has lands, spells, and a dork that I would sacrifice when playing Sephiroth. While some of these hands start with 3 lands in them, and we're odds on to start with 2 to 3 lands in each opening hand, I think this is solid. We have enough card draw to get us through any blocks of land we might run into, and tutors to get us what we need when we need it. With 5 cuts, I'm stumped on where to cut from. And here's where I utilize EDH Rec. I know some folks don't like checking it, but I like using it as a fact-checking tool. See, they have these synergy modifiers on cards that show volume and frequency of use and whether cards add to or detract from the deck. And this isn't a hard and fast indicator of how good a card is, but I like to use it to see if I've included anything that doesn't really make me as much value as I might think in my head during deck building. And it looks like the lowest synergy indicators are the tutors and the scam spells. Unsurprising, these were goodies that I wanted to add in. Everything else looks to have synergy scores with over 10%, which makes sense the way that I've plotted out the deck focusing on synergy. Let's cut 2 of the 2-mana Brings Friends creatures, Doom Dissenter and Discord Piper, along with 2 of the scam spells to reach our perfect 100. I'm not going to cut from the lands despite the low mana curve because I reliably want to be able to hit 3 mana from ideally my opening hand alone to ensure that I can always cast Sephiroth by turn 3. When I get into playing the deck, I might cut from the lands if I feel like there's just too many in there and I'm reaching gluts of land often. And there we have it, a tight 100. I'm going to run it through a few more test hands on Moxfield, then see if I can play virtually with the playtest tool against some friends in Spell Table before pulling the trigger on actually getting the cards together. Since this is a higher powered list, it's not the cheapest deck in the world, so be cautious. You can build high-powered decks on a budget. Check out my $25 Bracket 4 Zata Hedron Grinder deck as an example. But decks like this that prioritize power over your pockets are not going to be cheap to pick up. They are cheap to proxy though. Let me know what tips and advice from today's build you found most helpful. Anything you've not used before or utilized when brewing or building? And what do you want to see next to help you tune up your brews? Hit up those comments and let me know right now. And don't leave without checking out my sponsors like Card Conduit. They are hands down the easiest way to sell your individual Magic cards without the hassle of traditional buy listing. They'll get you top dollar while handling all of the heavy lifting, from sorting to grading to optimizing your price across a huge network of vendors. And they'll give you cold hard cash for it. You can use the promo code MECHANIC right now for 10% off of all fees. And if you want to pick up the cards for this list, make sure to go check out Card Trader. Use my promo code MECHANIC right now for 5% off your order from any TCG. Card Trader's zero system means you can get cards from all over the world with only 1 shipping fee. Save money and time today. Lastly, you can check out all of my decks on Moxfield. Moxfield is the best deck building platform in the world and makes it easy to build decks and search for specific cards with their powerful tools. Have you checked out their drag and drop feature yet? It's revolutionary. Be sure to check out my brews and follow my profile there right now. If you were inspired to brew today, you have to hit that subscribe button. Check out this other deck on my channel right now for more sweet tech. And as always folks, good luck and have fun.